Okay, what we're going to talk about today is called completing the square. Okay, so there are about 5 steps for this. The third step can be changed a little bit, but we're gonna keep it consistent by adding to both sides right away. All right. So the first part is step one is separate the numbers and the variables. So right here we can see we've got x squared plus 10x. And we're going to separate it. We're going to create a little bit of space, and we're going to leave the -9 over on the right-hand side. Step two says find the complete the square constant, or find the constant. In this case, right, we've got a is 1 and b is 10. So if a is 1, great, we're happy. So what we need to do is we need to figure out, well, what is the complete the square constant? So if I do 10 divided by 2, and then square it, I'm going to get 5 squared is 25. All right, step three, I'm going to add 25 to both sides of the equation. Now, the reason I do that is now this is a perfect square trinomial. And what do I mean? Well, x plus 5 quantities squared is what it breaks down to. And then why is that the case? Well, you know that 5 times 5 is 25, right? We got 5 times 5 is 25. And then 5x plus 5x is 10x. So you're going to see that that's kind of the point behind this, right? We wanted to complete the square so we can get a binomial squared. And now on the right-hand side, -9 plus 25 is 16. Now this works out nice and neat. Because after we factor, we just take a nice little square root right here and then a square root right here. So we're left with x plus 5 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, if you ever take the square root of a variable in an equation, you need to consider both the positive and the negative version, okay? Because -4 times -4 is 16, and then +4 times +4 is also 16. So to solve completely, this is going to turn into two different cases. What happens if 5 more than a number is +4, or 5 more than a number is -4? So if I'm going to go ahead and solve this, right, I simply subtract 5 from both sides, and you're going to see you do the same thing in both equations. So we're going to get two solutions to this. 4 minus 5 is -1 is one solution. And then over here, I've got -4 minus 5 is -9 is our second solution. All right, so there's two answers to this problem because we're dealing with a quadratic, a squared value. Okay. Now this is completing the square. This technique is the most universal. You can do this for every style of problem. Okay. Let's take a look at it. I made the directions a little bit smaller, but we're going to follow the same steps. Okay, so step one is separate the numbers and the variables. So you can see now that I have an 8x, so I've got to move the 8x over to the other side. So I'm going to get x squared plus 8x equals, and now what I'm going to do here is -15 minus 15. So I'm going to get -15 on the right-hand side. So you see how I separate the numbers and the variables. Right, so the next thing to do is find the complete the square constant. Right, so I've got an a value of 1, good. I've got a b value of 8. Okay, so 8 divided by 2 squared. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. And again, what does that do? That turns this into a perfect square binomial because 4 times 4 is 16 and 4x plus 4x is 8x. So you're going to see on the right-hand side now, -15 plus 16 is +1. And when we get down to this step right here, we take the square root of both sides, square root of both sides. So now we have x plus 4, which is the whole point of completing the square. And over here we have, well, what happens if 1 is positive or what happens if 1 is negative? Okay, so this separates into two different cases. x plus 4 is positive 1, or x plus 4 is negative 1. So subtract 4 from both sides, and you're going to get x equals negative 3, or x equals negative 5. There are two solutions to that problem. Okay? All right, again, same step here. You can see that this is nice and easy. It's set up for you already. Okay? Let's move over to something over here. We're going to get a little bit more of a challenge here, because watch what happens if I do this. All right, I've got the variables together. I'm going to move the 29 over to the other side. Okay, so we're left with x squared minus 12x is equal to negative 29. So what happens here is, can we complete the square? Well, I've got an a value of 1 and then a b value of negative 12. Check, okay? So negative 12 divided by 2 squared is going to be 36. So I add 36 to both sides. So this breaks down to, be careful here, x minus 6 quantity squared, because negative 6 times negative 6 gives us positive 36, and then negative 6x plus negative 6x is a negative 12. So watch out for your signs there. And when you can see what happens on the right-hand side is going to turn into a 7. Right? So now when we take the square root of both sides, I'm left with x minus 6 is equal to positive or negative radical 7. So what happens here is this is an irrational answer, which is okay. You can have an irrational number as a solution. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides here. If I just do plus 6 and plus 6, x is equal to 6 plus or minus radical 7, and then you can leave it just like that as part of your solutions. Okay? Hope this goes pretty well. This is a really good technique, especially if you are one of the students that is interested in taking AP Calc. All right? Good luck.